This episode is sponsored in part by PTZ Optics. Why hire a camera operator when the control is in your hands? Visit ptzoptics.com for more information. And by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster TC1. Stun your viewers, not your accountant. Visit newtek.com for more information.
Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday edition here of Creators Corner. I am so excited that you guys are joining us here today, and we've got a really special guest today, an entrepreneur, fellow gamer. I mean, what more can you say? But we're going to get to a little bit about my guest today. But I want to put this out there to everybody. If you're here for the first time and you're leaving comments, we love it when you leave comments. But if we don't answer, there'll be a Q&A session at the end of this. I like to try to keep it so the guest gets that, get his story out, and we get to hear that. Some interesting things that are going to be coming the next couple of weeks. We've got a lot of conventions coming, a lot of different guests that are going to be coming on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are as well. So today's guest, we have the owner of BD Retro Mods, and his name is Brian Dittfeld. He started BD Retro Mods back in November of 2021 from his own needs of wanting better and more affordable controls for various retro video game consoles. He wanted to make these available to also us, the retro gaming community, as well as it's really getting harder to find certain original controllers in great working condition. Now, Brian has been on various podcasts over the years and is the co-host of the weekly Retro Bliss Rewind podcast, which can be watched every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. He was also recently featured in issue number 39 of Old School Gamer magazine, which is a great magazine, by the way, and if you're not subscribed, you should subscribe. Brian continues to grow BD Retro Mods with a new controllers and accessories option as a hobby to help keep parts of video game history still playable. And before we get to my guest, Brian here, I want to give a special shout out to Scott and his crew over at Game Closet and the Retro Roundtable, where Brian was actually on a little bit ago. If you haven't subscribed, head on over there. They had a good show going on. I was listening to it while I was setting up, and really appreciate those guys giving a shout out to the show here. And welcoming my guest today, Brian. It's so great to have you on here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
You have like double duty today. So you were over with Scott, and now you're over here. Like, you feeling a little bit tired yet? Are you enjoying it? Where are you at right now with this?
Oh no, I always enjoy doing shows like this, and Scott's a good friend, and he messaged me earlier today saying, "Hey, are you able to come on? I know it's last minute, and I know you have this tonight, but appreciate you can come on," and talked it out and got on there to help out on that, and now I'm here to help out on this one.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's always great, and I'm interested to hear the story behind BD Retro Mods, and even yourself. You and I, we kind of ran into each other at several conventions. We just started talking to each other, and I think at one point, one of the conventions, I realized that you actually had a table. I don't know if we bumped into each other, or you were just, at one point, I thought one convention you were walking around and we just kind of bumped into each other, started talking to each other.
Yeah, that was the Pittsburgh one. Yep.
It was Pittsburgh. Okay. And so, we just and then I kind of put two and two together when I was hanging out with this crew, and I was like, oh, we got to get Brian on here. We got to get him to tell his story. So like I do all the time for these shows, I always ask my guests, how did it start? Did you start playing games when you were a kid? Was there a special system that you started out with, or were your parents like some of my other guests that I've had, where I think it was Game Dad, where his parents were like, yeah, we're not wasting money on video games. You're on your own.
Yeah, so my first console that experience and was as a kid is this one right up here, the Intellivision 2, and played that for the longest time. We had a few games for it, Burger Time, Demon Attack, Beauty and the Beast. We had fun playing those, and and eventually got to play the Atari 2600 because my aunt had one and was able to play it there. But like the first console I got that was actually mine would have been an NES, and I think I probably got that around I think 87, 88, somewhere around there. And the good old set that came with the light gun, Duck Hunt, and Super Mario, and yeah, and it just kind of really went from there. I mean, from that, it was really trying to pick up all the latest ones after that, between Sega and Nintendo, and eventually PlayStation and stuff.
So I got to ask you, because we had Johnny Graphics on a few weeks ago, and he was one of the first, I think, that I've had on the show where he said that he actually grew up with the TurboGrafx, where I don't know how it was in your neck of the world, but we didn't have anybody that I knew growing up that had one of those consoles. Was it the same way with you? Did you either your friends had Nintendo or they had Sega, right?
For the most part. Now, I ended up having one friend who did end up getting a TurboGrafx. Like I had the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, but I never had a TurboGrafx. And then just out of the blue one day, one of my friends ended up getting one, and they had obviously Bonk with it, and Keith Courage that came with the system, and Kadash I think was another one that I remember playing with them. So. But the TurboGrafx 16 is a great system. I love it to death. It's one of those ones I didn't really dive into until much later in life. But if it would have came out sooner than it did here in the States as it did in Japan, I think it could have been a whole different situation there.
Yeah, you and I both. We were both on that same page. I didn't get into it when I was a kid, and I think it's interesting because it's certain parts of the States and the world, like the friends had other systems. It just seems weird. Like everybody I've talked to so far has been either Nintendo or Sega. You're a Nintendo guy, which is cool. So growing up, what was your favorite game that you had for the NES? What like stole your time the most?
The one that stole my time the most was probably Super Mario 2. And because I got the system, and then like a couple months after that, finally got a copy of Super Mario 2. And I think for a lot of folks, growing up around that period, I mean, you didn't get games as often as we buy them now.
That's for sure.
I mean, you literally got the one copy for your a game for your birthday,
yep,
a game for Christmas, and
yep.
maybe a grandparent would end up sneaking one to you for Easter or something, but so you didn't really have a lot of games that you owned, so you played the same ones a lot. And Super Mario 2 was one of those. The other two games that I had that played for a long time was Mega Man 2, Bionic Commando, and Castlevania 3. So
yeah, those games, Super Mario Brothers 2. Speaking of Easter, I remember getting Super Mario Brothers 2 for Easter. We told our parents that we didn't want any candy for Easter. We just wanted Mario Brothers 2, and that's what we got. Now, we did get a little bit of candy, but we did. We wanted that. So I feel you on that game for the NES, and I think that drives, like, I know we're going to get to it a little later with your controllers, but I think that drives a lot of like the cool innovation I've seen you do with some of your controllers, because is that the most nostalgic system that you really have a heart for, or pulls on it? Now, obviously you're making them for other systems, but is that your go-to?
I mean, for it being the first one that I owned, I mean, obviously there's always a place there for the NES. But again, I've really come to like over the years. I've really enjoyed Atari 7800. I've really enjoyed ColecoVision, TurboGrafx 16, consoles, and Sega Master System as well. Systems that I just didn't have growing up.
Yep.
That I've come to really appreciate now. And but obviously, I think for many of us, I mean, there's no doubt, the NES is what brought video games back to North America. After how things went with the crash and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's awesome. That's where my heart is right now, with everything that I'm doing with that as well. So, All right, so you had the Nintendo growing up. You had some of the other, the Intellivisions and stuff, and then obviously we all get to the point where we go to college, right? Did you keep your games? Did you sell them? Did you do what most of us did? We sold our games and kicked ourselves.
That's exactly what happened. I mean, that was the only way we could get the next gen console. I mean, I can really kick myself now because I had so many Sega Genesis games that I would just love to get a hold of again, but there's just no way I can justify paying the price for them. And because and you may remember too, it's just like it was at the time Electronics Boutique.
Yep.
When it came to Sega Genesis, like all those renovation games, Namco games, they were always in those bargain bins for like $10 to $20, and those were the games I always kept getting, at that point because they were cheap, but they were fun. And then, the other day I decided, hey, I'm curious how much Splatterhouse 2 or Splatterhouse 3 is going for. It's like, or the Valis games, all those ones that, you got from the bargain bins and now they've skyrocketed. And, but again, you had to, I mean, to be able to get that next gen console, it was pretty much trade up everything you had to be able to get it. So,
yeah, it's one of those things like I made the joke on a podcast where I said about, Nintendo just keeps trying to suck us dry. They keep putting out the same game in different systems and everything like that. And then I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't I the guy that sold all my games back when, and now I'm buying them all over again? Never mind. Like we do that. I mean, that's the
I mean,
part.
I'm sure we could all try to count how many times we bought Super Mario Brothers over again. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy to think about all that. You're in college, you sold everything, you focused on adult things. Then you get married. How is your wife with all this stuff? Does she support you with this? Because we found, at least I found even in my own life, that if your wife doesn't support what you're doing, yeah, it's a bad time. It's just not gonna work.
No, she's definitely supportive, and she likes video games as well, and doesn't play a lot of the older stuff as much as I do, but there's still games that she enjoys playing today, and she's definitely supportive of it.
So I'm just going to bring up this comment here right now because Retro Rob's in the chat room starting things off here. He's trying to get everybody riled up in the chat room here. Nintendo keeps doing it because people keep buying them. Yeah, my wife does the same thing. But you know what? She does play a lot of the Animal Crossing. We got her into Splatoon 3. So she's been playing that. She's been having fun. So I think a lot of it, like a lot of women would look at what we would do in collecting and stuff and look at it as just clutter, but I don't know, I'm pretty organized with it, and I think that helps with stuff. Like I could see your shelf behind you with all your modded stuff, and it's very organized, very clean. I can't see a wife having a problem with that, right?
Right.
So yeah, I was gonna say, unlike this guy in the chat room here, Mr. Right Way, we always have a problem with this guy. No, I'm just kidding. I got to give Steve a hard time. So, at what point, you got married, you have a family, at what point did the light bulb just go off and go, you know what? I'm going to start making controllers. I'm going to start my own little hobby business. I'm going to go out to different conventions. I'm gonna do what the industry kind of didn't do, and I'm going to create things that people only dreamed about having, and now I'm going to make it a reality. What was the point? Where did you get the gumption to do that?
Yeah, so even go back a little, before that, because it'll kind of lead up into it. Is just that, like you mentioned, you sold a lot of that stuff off, and at one point, Raspberry Pis became the big thing, right?
Yep.
Doing all the emulation and for me, as I was playing, I'm like, I was reminiscing and enjoying those, but I didn't have the same feeling as having the original stuff. on a CRT television, which is like behind me there, and different things, um, and again, I have nothing against emulation, and because again, it helps preserve the gaming history, and is an outlet for folks to be able to enjoy those games. But I don't know. For me, it was just like, man, when you have a device that has like 50,000 games on it, it's just like, wow. And again, just there was something about just being able to play on original consoles again. So I just kind of decided, like, hey, I want to start going back and grabbing the things that I remember, and I enjoyed. And when I did start that, it was definitely a lot cheaper then too. But from there, as I started to get those, then I started to experiment with consoles that I wasn't familiar with, and with that led to now that at this point, this would probably been about almost 7 years ago now, I think. I don't remember the exact date, but at the time I was really big into Magic the Gathering. And so I went to a card shop to look for some cards I was looking for. And just, out of luck, they had a Master System there. And, not a place you would go to expect seeing a video game console, or games. And so they had a Master System, complete in box, with the 3D glasses, the light gun, a couple games for it. And, I never had a Master System before. And I was just like, I'm really like staring at it. And there was no price tag. And I'm just like, how much are you guys selling this for? And they're just like, oh, I don't know. How's $50? And I'm like, okay. So, I mean, grabbed it, brought it home, and messed with it a little bit. And, and I really liked the Master System. But, the problem is just as I was playing it more, especially coming from the NES,
Right.
The D-pad controller just on the Master System, just, again, some people may like it, but it's just didn't feel right for me. And again, I like, obviously, as you can tell with my controller, I like joysticks. And one of the controllers I had with it was this one right here, the Sega Control Stick.
Oh, I
And
have that. Yeah.
and I, again, if you like this thing, great. But for myself personally, this thing was a nightmare for me.
Just
One,
say it.
because
It's a disaster. That's
I
okay. I'm
mean,
with you.
yeah, and for me, and again, some people like it this way because I'll do
Mm-hmm.
custom flip arounds for folks, but for me, I'm not used to the joystick being on the right hand side, and then just the knob that was with it, and just the overall feel of it just did not work. Um, and with that, I was just really wanted some better controllers for that console. And so ultimately I tore that controller apart, kind of looked at how it was all made up, and I ended up making my own. And this was, and again, obviously it's not pretty looking, but this was literally the very first controller I made.
Nice.
And this was for the Sega Master System. And with it, much better experience for myself. And as I did that, I'm just like, if I figured out how to do this for the Master System,
Yeah.
I wonder if I can do this for the Atari. Because again, for myself, the Atari controller, same kind of situation.
Yeah.
And then I successfully did that. And then it's like, okay, well, now what about the Nintendo, and what about the Sega? And it just, the Genesis, and it just kind of all, I don't want to say spiraled, but for lack of a better term, it just kind of spiraled from there. And um, and I've been doing that now, again, almost 3 years now. Because I said, after I made them for myself, because I made about 5, 6 different ones, that I just decided that I'm sure I'm not the only one that was having a need for a controller. And and just something that was affordable, and of still a good quality. And because again, a lot of these controllers are old, so
Yeah.
they don't work as well as they used to, or there might be some other options out there, but they're just very, very, very expensive. And and I just wanted to try to find a happy middle point of a product I thought people would like as much as I did, and I just then decided I wanted to make that available to folks. So, like I said, I kind of started doing that in November 2021, and I've just continually grew it since then. And especially now that I've started to do conventions the last couple of years, I've gotten a lot of feedback from folks like, "Hey, this is a lot of cool stuff. Can you make this?" And like, okay, I can look into that. And what here, and this is a funny one, is that so the first time I set up at Korg's, with my stuff, I had like 6 people ask me, "Do you have anything for the TI 99?" And when I got to about the 5th person, I just had to ask them, like, "I'm sorry, but why do you need a controller for a calculator?" Like in my mind, I'm literally thinking, when they're saying, like, I'm thinking of my college days when I had to have a TI calculator for
algebra or something, or calc.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and like, they of course laughed. They're like, "No, silly, it was a computer." I'm like, that's news to me, So, right after that show, like when I got home, like even though I was tired, I went right on eBay. It's like, I gotta find myself a TI 99 and again, I ultimately made a bunch of stuff for that, and again, it just continues to grow because I know here recently, which I kind of announced them a couple weeks ago, and they'll debut it at Korg's. I had some friends ask about the Tandy line of computers, the Coco 2 and stuff, and I also had some people ask about the MSX, and so I've made now controllers for those. So, like for instance, here's my Tandy one.
Oh, nice.
That'll be available at the show. And that'll work on the Coco 2, 3, Tandy 1000, and with that, it kind of gave me an idea because the Tandy is an analog controller, but they never had paddles, and there's a number of games on it that would really benefit from a paddle. So then I came up with, going the wrong way here. There we go. Making a paddle for it. So now again, this will work on games for the horizontal movement, and it works great for them. Like there's a number of games that just have a much better experience with the paddle, and that's the other thing I try to do. Not just make arcade sticks, but try to actually make other things that may not have been there originally to make the experience better as well.
Now, I will say, and this is just completely off the cuff here, Brian and I were on a podcast, and I'm not going to tell you which one, but they thought it would be a fun idea to put me against Brian and choose the best and worst controllers of all time. It was a game that we were playing, right? And I feel great at the fact that it came down to the very last question, which you ended up getting anyways, with the worst controller of all time. I got the second worst controller. That made me feel good because you're the controller guy.
Yeah.
So I felt like we were kind of on the same page. So I say that because I agree with you with this, because I sit back and I look at Nintendo when they created the NES Max, and I'm going, what were you thinking? What went through your mind that thought a rotating disc was a great idea for a thumbstick? Like, am I the only one that thinks that?
No, the Max was definitely. I mean, I guess I got to give them credit for trying something different, but yeah, it was. I think the only game that I really found that to work great on was Burger Time on the NES. Just because using the regular D-pad with Burger Time on the NES is kind of rough. But no, I mean, especially when you look at like the NES Advantage, which I think was probably one of the better OEM arcade sticks, to come out from a company. And again, I know a lot of people still love using those NES Advantages to this day. But yeah, definitely the NES Max was a neat thought, but it definitely didn't work out, I think, like a lot of people thought.
Yeah, I don't know. The NES Advantage was obviously my favorite, but it was me being dumb. Instead of just using it for like what I would call traditional arcade games, I tried to play Mario Brothers with it, and that's just not. We're just not going to go there. But I like the idea of having these as options because, like you said, a lot of these controllers. I think it was Johnny Graphics that was talking about. He was interested in the TurboGrafx joystick that you have, and I'm right there with him. I'm going to be looking at that at Korgs because if anybody has priced TurboGrafx things this day and age, you know everything is through the roof. And I want to say that joystick. Now, whether or not you're a completionist and you got to have it in the box or not, but I want to say that's a couple $100 just for the joystick. So having a replica for some of those other games like like obviously TurboGrafx is known for shmups. I love using a joystick for those types of games.
And that's
awesome.
Same here. Like if I'm playing a shmup, I gotta have a joystick. I don't like playing it on the D-pad at all. And yeah, so with that, I actually have it here. So here's the TurboGrafx.
Oh, very
one.
nice.
So,
yeah.
So again, has joystick, buttons, and then you do have turbo functionality still with it as well. So it's not the 3-mode or 2-mode turbo, but you can do max turbo on or off with it.
But still, just to have that, feeling where you're not necessarily you don't have to go out and buy the original, but to be able to use a joystick with it with some of those games that really were designed to have joysticks and not, play with the. Now the control pad, I do like the control pad compared to the Master System's control pad, but that's another story. These guys in the chat room. But yeah, I think it's interesting. What about the weirdest, besides the TI? What was the weirdest ask that you ever had for a controller?
The weirdest, I gotta try to think. I know
or rarest. What would that be a better one?
I've had folks ask me about if I can do something for the Channel F, and like that's just not one I think I can tack. I don't have one, but this the way that one's designed is a little bit more to it. I mean, but I'd say that one, and then the Apple IIe is another one that's been asked about, but again, I don't have one of those to really test on, and that's one of those things like I'm not okay making it unless I have a console to actually test with before putting it out there.
So you got started. You wanted to make these because they're rare, and the controllers are so hard to find in some instances, or just too expensive. You started doing this. People started jumping on board with this. What's going through your mind at this point in time? Are you sitting there going, "Wow, maybe I found a niche here. Maybe there's something here," or has it always been? You know what? Let's just keep making and putting out what the community wants, and we'll kind of go day to time.
Yeah. So I will say there's definitely kind of been some, I guess like shock and awe moments in the sense of like, oh crap, like I got a bunch of these orders in. Like I wasn't expecting that, and because again, like a lot of us, this is not my core job. I have a main job, and like this is done literally as a hobby side thing that I like to do, and so it's just, with that is obviously balancing the time, because I want to make sure, everything can still happen and, still put out good stuff in a timely manner. So, so there's just been some times where it's like, oh, that's hit off a lot more than I expected it to,
Right.
So just got to kind of, do that. And, and with that too, like some of the things, thinking ahead too is, I've done Etsy for a while, and it's like part of me starts to wonder, like, am I to a point that I need to start my own online store instead of using Etsy? Because like right now you can either order on Etsy, or you can email me directly, or you can find me at a convention that I'm at. But again, I think, as things continue to grow, because it is definitely growing, it's like, I think, I just got to kind of change some of those things up a little bit. But
I might get those dog bones too.
Oh yeah, no, they're great. But yeah, because actually, if you click on the controller accessories up there, I actually have a link. That page will actually show everything that I have coming. That's either out already or is going to be showing here soon at Corgs that I've at least announced. Because there's some other things yet that's not been announced that'll eventually show up there.
Is that one of the things that you showed me in our little? All right, I won't mention anything. I won't say a word. I'm glad you said that because that would have been.
Oh no, we're going to show it. We're going to show that tonight.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, we'll show it.
I like the Jaguar. I like the Jaguar arcade style controller, dude. That is awesome.
Yeah, and you can't see that on the picture, but on the left side of it. So on the sides so on the sides of it are the remaining keypad buttons. So
okay.
If you're familiar with the Jaguar 6 button, like when they did those extra buttons, they were just literally remapped to the keypad. So like those top buttons are your 7, 8, 9, and then the L and R was 4 and 6. So, but then I put the other number ones on the side, but I also did the rotary mod for Tempest. On the left side of it too. So,
but even the Jaguar, there's a lot of games that you can use a joystick with. That it would be. I mean, I do like the feel a little bit of the Jaguar controller, but it's still a clunky controller in my opinion. But I think what you've done with it, did you put a rotary knob on this?
Yeah. So I've modded. Yeah.
Wow.
So I mod them. So I've been able to get old new controllers, like from like Best Electronics and stuff, and then I take those and I modify them to do the rotary mod for like Tempest and some of the other homebrews that are out there for the Jaguar.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. We'll be checking these out up close at Corgs. We'll doing some B-roll video there as well. Like we like to do that. That's what we like to do. We like to get some footage for you guys for the YouTube channel as well. But Neo Geo, that's another one. Like if you're fortunate enough to find a Neo Geo inexpensively, and I say that very very loosely. Okay, I want to stress.
I was going to say, is anything with Neo Geo cheap?
Well, no, right. That's what I'm saying. Like I say that very loosely, but let's say you happen to find one. Ryan at least has you covered if you get one that has the controller and you need a secondary controller. It looks like Brian's got you covered here. Oh yeah, that system, man.
But then like some neat things there too, like and again, this one's very niche as well. But like if you scroll up just a little bit there, like the track and field. So like so like that's for the NES, because the NES never had like the Hypershock controller that the Famicom had. So I've remap things to make it work like a Hypershock controller. So like now that particular controller only works for track and field, but it gives you that same experience if you would have had the Hypershock controller for the Famicom.
I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever played track and field for the NES, and I have the game because obviously I'm trying to collect for the full North American collection of the NES, but I have not played track and field. I don't believe I'm going to have to play it now because I'm curious as to how the buttons work. Like what is it, just for accelerating the runner, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the one is your action button. So it'll depend on like the event, but like the one's like your action button for running and stuff, and the other one's the jump. But then like if you're doing like the clay shooting, let's shoot left side, right side, so forth. So
so let me ask you then, because that's what I'm trying to figure out. So like if you were playing it with the original controller, how would you play it? Would you just you're not using a D-pad?
Yeah, so you would have to use like the right D-pad, the right butt of the D-pad, and the like A or B button depending. So
this makes it a lot easier in essence.
Yeah, it does. It makes it kind of closer to the arcade style.
Okay.
So
yeah, track and field just wasn't something that I did a lot with. So now you got me curious. Now I'm gonna have to play it before Corgs. Let's see, be like, yep, I got to get Brian's controller for this. So the Tandy, that's another. You know what? Tandy controllers are hard to find. If you're fortunate enough to find like an old mom and pop retro shop. But other than that, man, tough to find.
Well, and they're just the originals aren't the best either because I have
Yeah, didn't they
an
have problems
original.
with the pins here, like in the joint or right in the cabling, like it would break or something? I thought one of them had that problem.
It might have. I'm not aware of that, but I mean, it could have. I just know that the analog stick is so like tiny and loose that um, I I mean, again, I mean, I'm sure at the time, obviously people made it work,
Right.
um, using it today, it's not a great experience.
No. No, no, no. But I mean, it's again for options. Options are always good, no matter what.
Yeah.
There's your TurboGrafx, USB spinner control. Yeah, trackball. Trackball's a must for Marble Madness,
Oh yeah.
or Missile Command in this case. But I played on my multicade with Marble Madness, and then the Vectrex. So that's one system I never had. I never played the Vectrex.
The Vectrex, again, I never had one either until I bought one to be able to research for making controllers for. But I mean, I think it was definitely ahead of its time, and it's a good. I mean, it was definitely a good system. I mean, I think it, again, like a lot of things, it just came out at the wrong time. So.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about this here. You have multiple adapters. Is this basically to just make two players on one player? I mean, what are these to adapt?
Yeah,
style
yeah.
controllers?
So the adapters, like the paddle one specifically, is because I went back and forth on that with the Atari paddle arcade ones that I've done. It's kind of like the Hyperkin Ranger. It's just a one-player controller, but to be able to use two paddles, you got to have something that would allow you to connect two of those into controller port 1 or controller port 2. If you were doing 4-player games with it. So that was an adapter I came up with just as an option because I was afraid if I made those paddle controllers as two only that it would be too cost prohibitive for people. So I broke it up instead of making a paddle that was automatically two paddles together. So so that's what that one is specifically. But one of the things I really wanted to focus on this year, and I finally got around to it, is that obviously I understand not everyone can buy a brand new controller for every single retro console they have. Or they might have a favorite that they want to use on a lot of different things. So, I've started now making adapters that will work with certain controllers to work on multiple systems. So.
Oh, very cool. So, like, if they have a favorite controller that you're selling, they like if you bought the TurboGrafx one and you want to use it on Nintendo for whatever reason, you could.
That would not be a good example because I don't have one that can do that. But
okay,
yes, or
a Sega one. But that would be better.
Yeah, so there like if you had a Sega Master System or an Atari controller, to be able to work on some of those other ones, those are kind of where I got the adapters for right now. So
leave it to me to pick the oddball controller, right? When we're trying to make a point here. I picked the wrong one. You know what we're going to do? On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to talk to Brian about what the future holds for BD Retro Mods and what conventions he's going to be at this year in case you want to check out and have hands-on his controller. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Hey guys, let me tell you a little bit about something to do with energy. We all could use a little bit of energy in our lives, especially when we're gaming out there, right? We could all use some form of energy supplement, something to keep our mind sharp and our energy and our focus on the games. And that's where one of my latest partners, and that is MAW Energy, MAW Energy. And I want to tell you a little bit about it here today. And they have a plethora of different flavors and choices amongst everything that they have here. At MAW Energy, the mission is to fuel the gaming community with the highest quality energy. And that's one thing I like about these guys. They have a highest quality of energy focus blend on the market. And their special formulated energy drink provides gamers with sustained energy bursts and focus without the jitters and crashes. I can tell you that for certainty. commonly associated with all the other energy drinks that I've seen personally on the market. And they're passionate about the gaming community and understand the unique demands that it places on the mind, the body, and even the soul. That's why we've partnered with this company to bring you the Maw Energy. Now, you can click on the link in the description below and check it out using my personal link. I get access to everything here, and I get credit for it. And you guys can see right here, Blue Raspberry. Blue Raspberry is one of my favorites. In fact, you guys will be able to see right here. I have the Blue Raspberry here, and this is one of my favorites, actually. I have this one, and I have the Mythic Melon. I haven't given that a try yet, but this so far, one of the things that I like about this is the fact that it's not chalky. A lot of times with these energy drinks, you get a little bit of chalk in there. And what I mean by that is that chalk aftertaste, or it doesn't dissolve. I can honestly tell you from experience, this here dissolves. So give it a try. Click on the link below and in the description and give it a try. You won't be sorry. I know I'm not. All right. We are back, and some people are asking, they're like, does it give you the shakes? No, it doesn't give you the shakes. Apparently the volume did. I apologize for that. That was a re-render of it. Thanks for the feedback, you guys in the chat room. I was adjusting the volumes on that. Brian, I thought we were going to be able to escape and take a deep breath on that one because of going to dry. And leave it to Mr. Rightway in the chat room to hold down the fort. No, we talked about how you got started, where you're at right now, and you've got some. You said you have some new controllers that you're going to show. What are some of the things? Because we're going to get him to show us some exclusive stuff here. Because, well, I mean, that's what we do. It wouldn't be right if we didn't do that. And how you can see that and what conventions you're going to be at. So let's dive into some of this stuff here, right?
Yeah. So the conventions that I'm going to be set up at with a vendor table is going to be Korgs here on June 1st, just in a couple weeks. Very excited for that one. The next one would be the Cleveland Gaming Classic, another great show, and that one's late September. And Torg, November 2nd, 3rd, we'll be having a vendor table set up there. But now there'll be some other shows that I will likely still attend, like CCAG. I'll definitely be there this year, but just kind of in attendance, and possibly attend Pittsburgh again. Just it really depends on the schedule, and part of that is, last year I set up at so many shows, and again, just trying to keep that balance. When you got to try to make so much stuff for every show, that can become a lot. And now with online orders really picking up this year, I just had to really pick what were the shows to really actually set up at. But I'm going to still be in attendance at most of the Ohio shows, so you can still stop me, say hello, and or if there's something you want specifically, I can always bring it with me, at the ones that I'm not fully set up at. So.
And if Brian walks by the broadcast booth where we're going to be, we're just going to like grab him and hijack him and throw him in a chair and tell him that he has to sit down and talk to you all that aren't going to be there if you're not there. Because that's what we do. So one way or the other, he's going to get his message out. Whether he has a table or booth, he's going to get it out. That's just how it is.
Oh yeah. And the other thing too with that too, some of it, and I think others in here will understand, is just when you, again, I love setting up, because again, I love talking with the folks that come to the table, and like I've had some regulars now, because I was catching up on the chats during break. Retro Bliss, with his jokes of going broke, because he has a lot of my stuff, and but there's some others that show up at the shows, and it's just great to see them and talk. But it is a lot to set up, and like, you don't necessarily get to go out and experience the show yourself. So it's kind of nice to kind of go just in attendance for some of them, to still be able to socialize with friends, and but then also get to be able to experience the show more. Because again, we're all doing this because we love the video game hobby. So,
well, it's funny you say that, because last year at Cleveland, I don't think I got to go around to any of the vendors until like an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes before the show closed. I was literally streaming all that time. I had people coming in and out. I had guests coming in and out. I had people asking, "Hey, do you want to sit down and do a panel?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." Gamer Aimer came over. I mean, like literally, people don't realize, like when, like you're saying, when you're there, you don't really get to explore the show. You don't get to. In your case, you don't have the time to go look for, maybe if people are there selling buttons that you need to get new. You're looking for a new vendor for that, or joysticks, or anything like that. When you're tied to a booth and people are coming by, it's not necessarily a bad problem, but it's not necessarily a good problem either, right? Because you can't be social with the people that are buying your products.
Right. Yeah, and that is the other thing too, because some of the shows, they get so busy that like you really want to sit there and talk to them more, and it's just unfortunately either just not able because there's other people that need your attention, or because it's so busy, they're just kind of getting pushed across anyways with the flow of the line. So
yeah, and you know what though, I found I met a lot of really good, really cool vendors as I went, and people just wanted to talk about their product, and I think that's cool. I kind of get irritated. I shouldn't say I get irritated, but I kind of get like, you show up with a camera and everybody gives, like, that's a vendor, and they give you like a 2-word answer. Like, so what are you doing? I'm selling controllers. You want to tell me about your controllers? They're controllers. And it's like, really? Like, this is your chance, man. Like, come on. I mean, I get it. I don't have a super large audience, but come on. Like, be excited about your product, right?
all right. I mean, no reason not to publicize yourself there and get the word out. I mean, if someone's willing to give you that advertisement, take advantage of it.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So you're going to be at these conventions. So if people are interested, if you guys want to check it out, check out some of his controllers. He's got some new ones that he's going to be debuting. He did share one of them with me earlier today. Are you ready to expose that? I think you did put it out a little bit ago, didn't you, on social media?
Maybe, no, I did not yet.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, nope.
So are we going to share it with everybody here?
Yeah, we're going to share it. So, again, coming up with just different ideas. This particular one, again, there's going to be, let me step back. So there's going to be another announcement that's going to be kind of exclusive to Retro Bliss Gaming that you'll probably see here next week. And, but the other thing I want to show tonight, though, really came from the idea of, I have a friend who's really into the Tetris and Dr. Mario scene, and just with some pictures of some different things and some conversations, it kind of gave me an idea for a controller, and I decided, we'll give it a shot, because as you see with what I build with stuff, some of my stuff is obviously your standard like arcade style sticks, but I'll make some unique things that are very niche that could or could not be beneficial for someone. So what I'm ultimately going to show here tonight first, and then I'll make the announcement tomorrow on Facebook and stuff, but is a couple line of controllers that are ultimately what I'm just kind of calling my hitbox style controllers. So
ooh, look how beautiful that is.
So yep, it's so like this is a nice sleek slanted enclosure that has the hitbox style. So if you're not familiar with the hitbox, they've become popular lately in a lot of modern like fighting games. So they make them a lot for like PS5, Xbox, and so forth. But when I thought about like Tetris and Dr. Mario, and I know you and I even talked about some other games in the message like Kung Fu or Rad Racer. This style could really come in handy, and it does work really well on those games where I'll eventually get my camera angle here, right? So like this kind of give you an idea. I mean, you have your left button, and the next one's down, and then right, and then the bigger button is up, and then of course you have your B and A, and then select and start above that. So this one's for the NES. Which is where the initial thought came from. But I'm like, well, hey, if I'm already doing one of these for the NES, what about something else? So, of course, we needed to then try it for the Sega Master System.
Oh, nice.
So got the same style and a nice black look, and again, it's definitely a niche product, but that's one of those things I like to do, just to see how it works, because who would have thought to make like a hitbox style controller, for retro consoles, because again, they're normally meant for fighting games. And but yep, we're still not done, because I can't leave out one of the favorites. So of course we also have it for the Atari. So this is set up as the Atari 7800, which would also work on your 2600 8-bit and Commodore 64 as well. So
you're getting a lot of stamps of approval in the chat room here as I've been pulling up the comments for you.
Oh, that's awesome. So no, I'm excited, because I said this is something different, and I just decided to kind of take a chance on it and just see how people like it. And I plan on having the NES one on demo at Korg's, so people can try it out as well. So the goal is to have a couple of each of these models available. And again, I didn't make like a ton of them, because I just don't know how it's going to really go yet.
Have you thought about, like, since you're going to these conventions, about taking like a pre-order form to see who's interested in it, and having them sign up on the form to kind of give you an idea of what you got to produce for each controller, maybe?
I haven't, but that's not a bad idea.
Just to see what the demand is, because like let's say if there's 40 people that want the NES one, and there's 30 people that want the Sega one, but maybe not so much the Atari, you can at least put the time into that. I mean, they're quick turnarounds, and then these people can get their controllers out. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Taking like a pre-order system, like.
No, I mean that's definitely not that bad idea, because it is definitely a challenge, because every time I think I got my ratios how I need to have it, it never works out. Where there'll be one year where people really want this specific one, and then the next year I make more of that, and then it's a whole different one where no one wanted that the year prior, so I didn't bring that many of them.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, definitely that's a really good idea to look at a pre-order type system for sure. So because that would definitely help gauge, because I obviously want to try to have enough stuff there for people, to get it, because obviously when they're at the show, they would prefer to get it at the show instead of waiting to contact me after the fact and so forth. So
yeah, especially I mean, you have it at the show, and then you also could do one before the show. People that are showing up, like if I said to you, I want a Nintendo one, and then maybe the guys in the chat room, like Retro Rob's, like, oh man, I want that Atari one. At least you can kind of go through and knock those out. Meanwhile, a lot of these guys are content creators, so if they get them, they're going to post videos and stir up hype. So now you're going to get even more business from it, because people probably have never seen it. So it's just a thought.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely a good idea, and something. Like I said, I don't know that I have time for it for Korgs, but definitely something for looking at the like CGC to look at a pre-order system.
Yeah, because I mean, Korgs is what, less than a week, a little over a week away.
Yeah. It's not far away at all. So
no, we'll be there in no time. It'll be. I mean, I always love convention season. It's busy. It always seems to go really quick, but it's always nice to touch base. And people don't realize a lot of the vendors are just as much part of the community as the gamers and content creators that are there as well. And I think this is the first industry that I've been in where the vendors are just as much part of the industry as the individuals, the people. So, which is cool. And you care about it too. That's the other thing.
Oh yeah, and that's what's nice about like shows like Korgs, because not all of them, but you do have more vendors that are again collectors like we are, that are just looking to get rid of some of their stuff, and again, they have an investment in the community like the rest of us. So
well, and I have to give him a hard time, but there is the one guy, Mr. Right Way. He's in the chat room. Last I heard, he's a reseller now. That's what I heard, So I'm just kidding. He's gonna shoot me when he hears me say that. But no, I think that it brings a lot more validity to the product that you're creating, because it's always like you always want a gamer creating a gamer product, right? Like in my industry, when I do a lot of stuff with the broadcast world, engineers are engineers, right? They're not broadcasters. So when an engineer creates something, a broadcaster goes, now, why would you want to do it that way? Okay, so in the gaming world, like you were saying about the controller, the way you designed it, I immediately thought of Rad Racer. I'm like, you know how bad my thumbs hurt from sometimes tearing those corners? Nobody uses the brakes. I mean, come on. So, so that's the first thing I thought of with that. So I could see my kids were even saying, they're like, man, this hurts your thumb. It like digs into the D-pad. So really cool. What are you thinking about retail price on that for the folks that are in the chat room?
Yeah, so so at the show, those are going to likely run for 60.
Okay.
Is likely what the cost is going to be for those, and part of that is that you wouldn't think it is, but it is. It's just, you know, that different style of enclosure is actually more expensive to get than my other ones that I use for all my arcade sticks and stuff. So, so, you know, because the way I price my stuff, because again, I want the stuff to be affordable, but also need to be, you know, fair on my time as well. So,
Sure.
So, you know, the way I price my controllers is a pretty simple model, and that is just the cost of the materials and how long it takes to make it. So I've kind of set myself up with, you know, what I feel is an adequate hourly rate. So, you know, parts and materials plus that hourly rate. So some things might only take me 30 minutes to put it together. So it's not as, you know, as expensive, but there could be some things like that Jaguar arcade stick, for instance. I could spend almost 3 hours putting that thing together.
Hey,
you know,
never apologize for what you're charging. Never, ever apologize. You know, I was just talking, you and I were talking before the show started, and I was telling you, the one guy came in and did some plumbing work for me. And could I have done it myself? Yeah, probably would have taken me 3 to 4 hours. Took him 20 minutes. What's your time worth? Okay.
Right.
For me to do something that you're doing, it'd probably take me days, weeks, months just to do one. Okay. You're paying for expertise. You're paying for somebody's time. What's your time worth? Okay. Everybody has an expertise. So I'm with the chat room. I think that's a solid investment for a controller. I really do. I think don't apologize, man. You do excellent work. There's nothing else to be said about it. I mean, really.
No. Thank you.
Future Brian, what are you thinking? BD Retro Mods. I mean, obviously you said you had a full-time job. You know, little secret to the people, we don't make enough money on YouTube to quit our day jobs. I'm just saying, Patreon, yeah, forget it. So is the goal one day, Brian? I mean, would you like that? Would you like the ability to maybe, not necessarily you create these, but you come up with the ideas? Maybe you have a manufacturing company making these controllers for people, or do you kind of like the idea that it's small and it's just a hobby that you can kind of make some extra money on the side? What's the future hold? What are you thinking?
Yeah, the future. So yeah, that kind of answers some of that. It, you know, again, this is truly a hobby for me. So, you know, I do enjoy doing it, and you know, really plan to kind of keep it that way. Now, again, if something would come up that, hey, there's an opportunity to do some more, you know, like you said, on the manufacturing side, I mean, it's definitely something I would look at. But I also think there's something there with it being a handmade product. You know what I mean? Not something that's just been, yeah, right.
That was a good one. That's why I pulled that.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I joke with this with Phil all the time. Yeah, I think he has a shrine right now of my stuff. Like, I think he has a whole shelf that he could take a picture of, and all my stuff's in there. I mean, he's gotten at least a dozen.
If he ends up coming on the show here at some point, I'm sure we'll make him show his shrine to Brian. We'll call it the Shrine to Brian, right?
Yeah, you need to get him and get some of these others in the chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I see Mike's in there too. Yeah, so yeah, Retro Bliss, Phil and Mike from Mike's Gaming Gala. Like I said, we all do a podcast together every Tuesday. Great folks, and those would be some more good folks to have on this
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
the show.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Postile was in there. He's another good one. I mean, there's definitely some good talent in the chat right now that would be great for this show for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you guys are interested and you wanna come on the show, if you're in the chat room right now, just send me an email, steve@ttbgaming.com. I'd love to. I don't care how big a channel you are, how small a channel you are. I don't even care if you have a channel. If you're just somebody that creates good content and you're an entrepreneur, we want to hear your story, especially if you have a good story like Brian. Brian's got a good story. Every guest I've had so far on this show, honest to God, they've had a tremendous story. They've always had something that you could glean from and really deep dive into. And I think there's something to be said about, people automatically think somebody's coming on talk about a product. They think, oh, great, he's going to spend the whole show talking about his products and trying to shill his products off. But no, there's a story behind this. It's not just so much like you said, it's a hobby. It's being in the community. It's giving the community what they want. And I love the fact that you're like, yeah, you know what? I kind of want to keep it handmade. Like there's something to be said about that, right?
Right. Well, exactly. And yeah, I don't know. I just I mean, everyone would like to see growth, and obviously I've been growing, and and one of the things is obviously just as I keep having the growth, what do I do to still make sure everything gets juggled around correctly, and but there is something with just again, instead of getting a pre-manufactured product, that I really feel there's something there for being handmade. And by doing handmade, I can also be more customizable with it, where, because again, nothing against the stuff, but like when you think about some of the, the bigger third-party controller makers, like Hyperkin and, Retrobit, things like that. I mean, they make a product, but then that's the product. And a lot of that's because they got to make so many of those. So they can't get, creative or maybe take more risks, on certain things, to see how they play out. So, and again, I still have more ideas I want to do. I'm looking at other consoles I could possibly make controllers for. Obviously I keep building new ideas like you saw here tonight, but want to maybe start looking into some of the other consoles that I haven't touched yet to see, because there's been a lot of ask for a Dreamcast Dreamcast.
Yes.
So,
yes.
That's something, that I hope to be able to look at here at some point, a GameCube one.
Yep.
Another one that, want to try to maybe do. And one that I keep putting on the back burner, that I would like to do, because again, I do the digital arcade style Vectrex controller, but at some point I would still like to get a true analog version of one out for folks. So,
well, it's funny you say, you keep growing and growing. Every time I say that to my wife, that I keep growing and growing, she puts me on a diet. So I don't know if that's the right thing I should ever say to her for that. So might want to be careful when you say that about growing.
Yeah.
If your wife's listening, she's going to put you on a diet. No, that's awesome to hear, because Dreamcast, I think for a lot of people, that is a huge console that's been it's just been so underrated, and it's just overpopular right now. And I don't think it was really given the fair shake to have additional controllers made besides the minor ones that were made. So, man, if you can come up with some kind of killer joystick for that, for making, some like Soul Calibur and some of these other fighting games, man, that's going to be killer.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And because again, I like the Dreamcast a lot, so it's one that I would like to do because, I have a lot of memories with it. We talked about that on the other podcast that we did together. So, again, like I got one for the Sega Saturn. It's like, now I need to get to the Dreamcast here at some point. So
they're staying in the chat room. They're like, forget the Dreamcast. Scott goes, forget the Dreamcast controller. I want a Dreamcast lens.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know. He's not had much success with that so far. So, because there's options out there, but it comes down to the quality of them. So
Yeah, Mike says Mike's Gaming Gala says just did my first Dreamcast review today. Great timing. I think you're getting the thumbs up. They want a Dreamcast controller, Mike Brian.
I'm gonna have to put that one up on the priority list.
Priority list. Get it going.
Yeah, but no, that was definitely a good video today, Mike. I like. Yeah, if you haven't seen Mike's videos, he does a lot of like cosplay intros with them. So they're really cool, and yeah, your one you did today for that game was awesome because it was a review of a point and click game. So his intro was literally mimicking the point and click stuff. It was you guys got to watch it to understand it. It's a really good one.
So if this is the first time you've been watching the show, I have a playlist of up to he's number 13 episodes of all the different creators that we've had volunteer to come on the show. And the purpose of the show is to get you to learn more about the creator, learn more about the entrepreneur, learn more about the business owner that you are either supporting, buying things from, and finding out their story, hearing what they have to say and what really got them in, and hear the passion behind it. When there's a passion product like you hear from Brian, you know there's a lot of love and care that's put into a product and time and passion behind it. So it's always great to hear that. So at this point in the show, what we want to do is we want to open it, and I know this gets dangerous with Scott and Rob. We're going to open it up for Q&A for Brian here. So get your tough questions together for Brian and throw them in the chat room because I know there's going to be some zingers that are going to come through. But you know what? It's great fun to hear some of those questions that come through. So if you guys got some questions, we'll wait for that to catch up. In the meantime, I'll throw out a first question so everything catches up. Brian, one that I didn't ask is, I asked you your favorite video game, but I didn't ask you what was your most favorite controller that you've put together that you had the most fun making and most satisfaction making.
The one that I had the most, it's kind of a tie, but I would say the one I had the most satisfaction with was the Atari 5200, and it's just because that one, as we all know, there's a number that aren't good controllers, but again, trying to find a working 5200 controller today is not easy to do. Or you might have to buy some rebuild kits for them and stuff. And but again, the 5200 is such a great console when you have a controller that works with it. And so I was very happy to get that one figured out, because that one took a lot of trial and error because you were converting an analog controller to a digital joystick type setup. So there was a lot of quote unquote sweat and tears going into that one. They finally get that one to work how it needed to work. So
I'm just going to apologize in advance for some of these questions that are coming in, because you're going to have fun with these. First one up from Scott Game Closet. He says, Retro Bliss's house is burning down. What controller of yours are you going to save?
So it has to be one of my controllers that he
owns in his house.
Huh.
He always puts a good twist on it, doesn't he?
Yeah. I'm just going through the head all the different ones that I've made for him. So I'm trying to think which one Phil would still need the most. Like, what is the one he would like be completely distraught without? And I'm gonna have to go with, I would have to save his Atari 7800 controller.
Okay, let me go back here. All right, Mike's Gaming Gala says, Brian, how is the progress going on that Bubsy controller? I told you they're coming. I told you.
Well, there's some inside fun to this. So
I figured there had to be.
Yeah. So on the podcast we do, there was just an episode when we were talking about the new Atari and, like what things they were doing. And we talked about how they acquired a lot of the licenses back, one of which was Bubsy. And we just had a running joke from there about, Bubsy needing to be their new mascot, which Mike did not fully agree with. And but with that, it became a joke within the podcast that's now our new mascot. So you never know, Mike. You might be surprised with a Bubsy controller here before long.
Oh wait, It gets better. So Retro Bliss Gaming wants to know, will you trim your nose hairs before Tuesday's podcast?
What kind of question is that? Do I really have nose hairs right now?
I read 3 of them and I'm going, oh boy, he's going to have a ball with these. This is a semi-normal one from Retro Trade. He wants to know, Brian, do you do custom designs on your controllers? I guess from customers, if they gave you a custom design, would you do them?
So it does depend. Like if you do order direct, or again, if I do look at, because again, it's a good idea, the pre-order setup. I have a bunch of different button options, color, with colors. If you want like a Sanwa style or a Hap style, ball joystick ball top or bat top. Now, if you want to get really custom, hold on here a second.
All right, he's going to grab one and beware the guy in the corner. There's always some.
So with that, some of the things I've done, but I'll be honest, they just haven't been overly successful, which is why I don't do them too often. But I do get custom.
Oh, that's nice.
Ones like printed. So like this was my Super Nintendo one, because even though it's not an easy game, I do like my ghouls and ghosts.
Yes.
So again, I can definitely do stuff like that for certain systems. So like if it's a 6-button console like Super Nintendo Genesis, or an 8-button like your Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation, I can definitely do that, because I send the design out to get printed on those and then get the shell sent back to me. But it is something I'm able to do. But surprisingly, when I've taken those like to shows, they just not been as popular as just the regular options I do.
So the mayor comes in with a very, very good question. And yes, if those that didn't know, Retro Rob is the official mayor of the Retro Gaming. I gave him that title, I think it was last week or the week before. The voice of reason and the reason of the voice. He says, Brian, favorite game to just unwind to?
Oh, man. I don't know if I got really just one, but that's tough. I would say one game that's a newer game that I've enjoyed a lot of, and I highly recommend getting it if you can. It's pretty much on every platform, and it's literally a $5 game. Is Donut Dodo.
Yes.
I really enjoy Donut Dodo because it just throws back to that old early 80s arcade style, and but with really good graphics and gameplay. It's so addicting, and I can just sit there and waste hours on it. Just because it's just a fun, easy to play go-to thing.
LL Cool Games says, I just want to say thank you for making an accessible controller. I know you're not out specifically to serve handicapped gamers, but that's part of what you're doing here, and that's a beautiful thing.
No, thank you. I appreciate that, and it's interesting you do say that, because you're right. I don't like publicize that as that, but I have had numerous messages sent to me, thanking me for making these, because of the fact that some folks have had issues like with their hands and stuff too, and using the regular controllers, just they can't play, where like now they have one of my controllers, and having the joystick style like that, they can go back and enjoy those consoles again. And that's been that's been a great thing, because that was something I didn't think would, I never even thought of that. And and it was just really cool to see that. And then there was also someone that I helped modify an NES controller for, because they ultimately lost their one hand, so they could only play one-handed. So people reached out to me asking if I could help them out on something, and we worked something out where ultimately I made additional buttons on the back of the NES controller right behind the D-pad, so that way you could play the NES one-handed. Ultimately moving the D-pad with your thumb, and then your 2 fingers behind the back of the controller to actually use the B and A that way.
Mysticles wants to know, Brian, do your controllers work on clone consoles?
Yes, they do work on clone consoles. Yep.
All right. Johnny Graphics in the chat room says, Brian, what is your favorite shmup of all time? And why is it Jinja Fukai? Yeah, I have a feeling that's like an inside. I'm not even going to try to pronounce all that.
For being a big shmup fan, I don't even know what that is. But when it comes to my favorite of all time, I mean, I got a lot, but the one that really sticks, because I spent a lot of time on it, was Radiant Silvergun on the Saturn. I really enjoy that one a lot.
I'm just pulling up some random comments here that the people are leaving. Let's see here. Here's one from Mike's Gaming Gala. I got to make sure I can read the whole thing here. He says, Brian, why do you have all your stuff available for this show? But whenever we talk about your stuff on our podcast, it magically disappears.
So here's the funny thing is that, so normally, and it's just, I haven't gotten around to finishing it, is that, made one of the upstairs rooms kind of like my podcast area now. But the wall behind it, I don't have anything up on it yet. And, with seeing the past episodes, everyone having all their cool stuff behind them, I'm like, I can't come on this show tonight with just a blank wall. So I literally brought all my stuff down to the basement.
Oh, wow.
to put myself, behind, at least have, a backdrop of my stuff. Because again, at some point I'm going to have that area completely finished. But with that, there's times where they ask me about a controller, and I'm not able to go quickly grab it because it's down here, not upstairs where I'm doing the podcast with them. So
here's a really good question. That I mean a really good question is, Brian from Retro Trade. Brian, do you do controllers for the mini systems?
So I've looked into doing one for the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, which the concept's there to do it because I had a request for one, and I figured out that it was definitely possible to do. I'm not really looked into any of the other ones, and it's just mainly because no one's really asked me. I mean, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah, I thought that was a really, really good question, because Johnny Graphics even says a USB version of any of them would be cool, because then they could even use them on emulators on a PC, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, I do have the one USB controller that works with like Raspberry Pi, MAME, and the Nintendo Switch. But that's obviously not the same feeling as if you want to try to have something closer to like an NES, 2-button or whatever. So, but no, that's something I definitely need to look into more. I've never really been asked about the mini ones. The only one I ever did get asked on was the TurboGrafx 16 Mini.
Yeah, I kind of never thought of that. Emulation is a big topic right now. I just did a video last week on it, and it seems like you stir the hornet's nest a little bit when you start bringing up emulation and you're talking about these mini consoles. Well, it's not the same as playing the original game, and why would you want to put money into that? But a lot of people they do want that, and so I think
let's be honest. I mean, emulation is very, very convenient and in many cases affordable. So, I mean, when you think about, again, as you can see behind me and like others, in the chat and stuff, there's a number of us who, yes, we would prefer old, the original consoles or even clone consoles, of some sort. And, but there's definitely an audience there for emulation. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with it, because to me, it's however you can still keep video game history playable. And that's the key.
Yep.
And even when it comes to like my controllers, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care what controller you're using, have it be mine or some other brand out there. I mean, it's just as long as you can go and enjoy, retro gaming, keep it going. That's really all that matters at the end of the day, in my opinion. So whatever platform that is best for you to make that happen,
that's it.
But by all means, do it.
So we got a $9.99 super chat from the mayor himself, Retro Rob. He says, "Amazing show tonight. You're a legend, Brian."
Oh, well, thank you, Retro Rob. Actually, I think you're the legend, man. I mean, I hear talks about you all the time on different YouTube channels and stuff. You're the legend, man.
We got to give a shout out to one of our moderators here, Jason Little Alien. He doesn't miss a show. He says, "Don't forget to check out the wide range of controllers and accessories at BD Retro Mods," and that's at bdretromods.com. And yeah, I added some new mods too. I added Game Closet and I added Retro Rob. These guys, I got to give it to them.
You're
man.
letting
They're
Scott
always
mod
there.
for you.
I know. No, Scott's a good guy.
Oh yeah, he is.
I sit there and these guys have been my biggest cheerleaders since I started this show, and it's been a lot of fun to do this, to learn about all these guys. And I want to encourage everybody that if you're going to one of these conventions and you see us broadcasting, because one of them you're going to run into, and I'm going to be broadcasting and set up. And Brian knows, he's seen a couple of the setups that we bring, like the whole studio, like it's a big shit. Come on up, like you're not gonna, I had some people run into me and they were like, "Oh, we didn't want to interrupt." Come in, sit down, and start talking. Like that's the best thing you could do at a convention, because
for sure,
it's a lot of fun. Get out there. We want to meet each other. We want to get on and do some content together. It's a lot of fun. And by doing so, Brian, we show all these other people who can't be there, like, man, maybe they should come to a convention, see how much fun we're having, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, again, that's the whole reason I go into a convention is for the, social aspect, because I mean, obviously the vendor hall's important, it's a big piece of going, but I mean, if that's the only reason that you're going, you're missing out on another big part of what makes conventions so great.
Absolutely. You guys, you definitely want to come out to the conventions and have a good time with us. These are a great group of guys. We make jokes all the time about the questions that come in the chat room, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because these guys are a great support. And you have a show every Tuesday at 8:30, because I'm going to have to tune in. It's at 8:30 on Tuesday?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock on Tuesday.
Yep. Yeah, Retro Bliss Rewind. You can find it either on Retro Bliss Gaming YouTube channel or Mike's Gaming Gala channel. We simulcast stream them on both.
If you guys wouldn't mind, because it's hard for me to do it right now, if you guys are in the chat room, or Little Alien, if you can put it in there, Jason, their channels, feel free to put it in there so people can subscribe, so we can watch that show on Tuesday. That way I can go back in the chat and I can actually click on it after the show's over, because Brian's seen my setup. He knows it isn't easy for me to just go click and subscribe. It just...
Yeah. No, that's an extremely impressive setup you got there for all this, for sure.
So we will we'll have to tune in and check that out. And again, I want to reiterate to anybody in the chat room, if you got a story to tell and you'd like to be a guest here on Creators Corner, send me an email, Steve at thetechbuzz.net or Steve at ttbgaming.com. Either one, it's in the lower third there. You can pretty much find me anywhere on social media, Facebook, and send me a message. Next week, I'm not sure who our guest is going to be, but I know the 30th, LL Cool Games makes her debut. She's going to be joining us. She's going to be in the hot seat. So you guys got 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks? Is it 2 weeks, Brian?
Yep.
2 weeks to get your crazy questions together for LL Cool Games, because I know you guys are always coming up with some wacky questions to put out there. Brian, do you have anything else that you want to put out there for the folks before we let them go?
Yeah, just thanks for coming on tonight, watching, and great questions. Great chat going on tonight, and just appreciate everyone coming out. If you're interested in any of this stuff, feel free to contact me. You can go to www.bdretromods.com, and all the information's there to get a hold of me. So again, thank you for coming out. I greatly appreciate it. This was awesome tonight.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it was a total pleasure to have you on here, and we had a lot of fun discussing everything from your past to your present to your future. It's always exciting. Lindsay says in the chat room, 2 weeks to get my first video up, and so we encourage you guys. Come on out and encourage another creator that's in the making. Come support each other. It's always a good time, and I'll be there Tuesday night to to blow up your chat room. Unless the mayor's there first, he'll get everybody going. But whoa, that was pretty fast. But guys, we really appreciate you coming in here and hanging out with us. We will see you next week for more Creators Corner. Have a good weekend.